Hi everyone! In this video, I want to show you how to create a simple Android mobile app that has products, shopping products, and the coolest part is going to be using Figma variables to make your cart interactive. So if we click on this button, Add to Cart, you can see my cart is updating. Making the cart interactive will allow you to test your product much easily, making your design very realistic. So let's get to it. Jump into a Figma file so you can follow the instructions and tag along with me. This is always the best way to learn. When you do it, you will remember how to do it. So first, I'm gonna click F to get a frame, and we're going to choose an Android small phone. The goal today, even though it's not our primary goal, is to also show you how to use an asset library. So in the Figma community or on the Material Design website, you can find the Material 3 design kit. What I've done is I've duplicated that library, added my initials right before it so I know it's my version without altering the original. And because this is part of my assets, I've added it as a library in my assets. Now I'm able to utilize the different styles and components available. I'm going to add a layout grid, and I want to make sure it is a recommended layout grid by Material. So this is under 599 DDP, so it's going to be an extra small. And as you can see, the moment I turn it on, Material has already outlined for us where the tab bar would be and the 4 columns with the correct margin that they recommend. So starting from here, I want to search for a top app bar and insert this instance, or you can just drag and drop it. I will bring this to the very top, and I'm going to resize this component either by holding Shift so I can maintain the aspects. So I'm clicking R to get a rectangle, and I want to match it to these 2 columns because I already know that I want my card to fit within these 2 columns. So I'm going to get this, move it to the side now, and start focusing on creating the component. Before we leave the asset panel, I already know we want to use a material button. So I'm clicking button. I'm searching for a button just to get that quickly. Okay, we're going to insert this instance of a button. This rectangle, I'm going to rename it in the layers panel as image, just so that I know this is my image and this is the button that I have. I'm going to move it closer to the image. Okay, so now we want to create some text for this before we can create the card. I'm clicking the T shortcut for text, and I'm going to start typing product name. As you can see, automatically Material has added a large label. This may not be what I want. I would like to use maybe a material title, small in size, as in 14 pixel. And then I'm going to click T again, and I want to type product description goes up to 2 lines. And I'm going to exit that by clicking outside of it, which will allow me to change the style that is assigned. So in case there wasn't a style that's assigned to this, by clicking on the available styles for you, so if this was disconnected, by clicking on these 4 dots, you would be able to select a style from the libraries that you have attached. As you can see here, I have another library that I created myself, but I want M3 so I can search for my libraries, and I want to apply maybe a body, small. And because this is going to be a secondary, I don't want it to have a black fill, so I'm going to give it a secondary color. As you can see, I have access again by clicking on the 4 dots. I have access to the material styles. They have a secondary color, which I'm applying here. Sometimes I notice that Figma auto layout behaves better if you actually start it by having the shape that you would like it to have. You may have a better result when you do that. So I'm going to start by doing this to get it to the shape that I want, and then I will apply auto layout. So this button is too big. I'm going to move from 40 to 32. This looks much better. I'm going to give it a change the label. Let's call it add to cart. Okay. And now, see, this is not aligned, but that's okay. At this stage, I'm ready to add all these different layers to auto layout. I selected all of them, and now I'm going to click Shift A, and we're going to center the whole content. And now this looks much more like I want it to be. I can see that there's space of 6 pixels between the items. I'm going to reduce that to 4. This looks much better. Let's call this frame. Before we make it into a component, I'm going to call this product card. And let's give it some rounded edges everywhere. So this is where you can see the corner radius. I'm going to give it an 8. You can't see that fully. Let's give it a fill so that it becomes visible to you. So I can either choose from the styles, and this is a material white. And now it's much more clear that the rounding happened at the bottom, but not at the top. And this is simply because the image layer does not have rounding. Now, let's look a bit closer. I want to give a corner radius on the very top of the card. However, I want the image to stay straight on the bottom. So I will select the image, and instead of adding an 8 here, I'm going to click on independent corners. I'll add 8, 8, and leave it as 0 at the bottom. And now this is looking much more like the product card that I would like it to be. What I'm going to do is just add a little bit lower bottom margin. So selecting the product card, as you can see here, once again, if I were to simply add 8, it will add on top and bottom like this, but that's not what I want. I don't want anything above the image. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on independent margin, and I want the bottom to be 8, but I want the top to be 0. Now the next step is a bit advanced, but it could be very helpful for you. A lot of designers are not fully aware that it is important to maintain an aspect ratio for the image when they create a component. And the reason for that is you want an aspect ratio for an image that would work for most of the images that your users would apply to make it easier for them. If this was a card where the user would add an image, or even to allow you to include product images that are much easier. So for that, I'm going to use a plugin. I'm going to go to the Figma menu, click on plugins, and you can see this is one of the last plugins that I use, but if I didn't have it, you come here, you search for plugins and search for something with aspect ratio. I found this particular plugin to be quite good. So here I can save it. So I'm going to click on it, double click on it, and now it opens the plugin. And because the image is selected, it's asking me, what do you want to resize it to? So ideally, I would like to go to a 4:3, which is a very popular size. I'm going to click on that. It resized the image, but this is too big. That's not what I would like. So maybe I'm going to try 3:2, and this is much closer. And once I've done that, do you see how we have a width and height here, but this is not linked? I want to link it together. So now we're constraining these proportions to make sure we're not by mistake changing that aspect ratio. This locks the aspect ratio. Now, another thing I want to do with the image is I would like to have like probably a placeholder image. And I know this is an image. This is not going to be a fill. So we're going to click on the fill itself. And instead of having a color, we're going to come here and put an image. As you can see, Figma gives you the option to even have a video. But we're going to have an image placeholder for now for this component. And I said component, but we actually didn't make it into a component yet. So let's do that. We're going to select this product card. I'm very happy with it. It has everything that we need. And we're going to go, you probably don't see that in my screen, but we're going to click on the diamond on top of your Figma bar to create a component. And now this is a component. Now, what does it mean? This is reusable. This is scalable. In other videos, I've shown you how to create component properties. We're not going to go into all this right now because we want to jump to the next part. For this video, all we're going to do is click Option and drag, because you never want to use your component in the design. Components should remain separate. They are the main element on our page. When we change something here, it changes all the instance. But for our design, we want to use an instance of the component. And like I mentioned before, it is important for me to align these things properly. Now we're gonna jump into using auto layout, different nested versions of auto layout. So let's start by creating a row. Again, with the item selected, I'm clicking Option Drag, and here I have my second product. Now selecting both of them with clicking Shift, I'm gonna do Shift A, and now we created this frame that has auto layout. I'm gonna double click on it and rename it to call it row. And before I duplicate it, I want to make sure it has everything the way I wanted. It automatically, because we're following the material grid, we have 16 a gap between the two cards, and this is what I would like to have. Now I want to duplicate this row. So having the row selected, I'm clicking Command D shortcut, and it duplicated it. So I'm dragging that down. I'm gonna position it as I would like, and now by click one row is selected, I click Shift and select the other row. Both of them are selected. Now I will click Shift A to create a vertical auto layout. So my row has a horizontal auto layout, and this frame containing my rows, which we're gonna call product list, it has multiple rows in it, and it has a vertical layout. Okay, now let's create some more. So let's select the second row, and once again click Command D, and Figma will automatically know to maintain the auto layout and create the same distance between all of them. In my product list, the spacing between the cards is just 8. I think we need to bump it up to 16. Let's do this. I would like to maintain the 16 pixel margin that we have on the right and left, also between the top header and the product list. So while having the product list selected, if you click on Option, you will be able to see the space. If I select Option and the other element, I'll be able to see the space between them. It's 21 pixel. That's not what I want. So I'm gonna nudge it up. 20, 19, 18, 17, 16. And to verify, clicking Option again. Oh yes. We would like to change these images. And now once again, I'm going to show you how to use a plugin to quickly do that. Let's manage plugins. I already have it here. Unsplash is a very nice image populating plugin. There are so many out there in the community, so feel free to experiment what works with you. I'm going to use Unsplash for now. It's loading it. Let's pretend that this is going to be a plant app. We're selling different plants, so I'm going to select a plant, and now it's giving me different images that we can populate from. I like this one. I'm going to use it. Now, what do we want to happen? We want this product list to scroll. Right now it says overflow, no scrolling, but we want it to scroll. So to allow that, we're going to say the scroll is going to be vertical. For scrolling to work on this frame, the content needs to be bigger than the frame. Okay, let's do that. So this is the frame and this is the content. Let us reduce the size of the frame. I'm clicking Command and shortening the frame. And I think when we come here in Design, we might need to click Clip Content, but let's test it first. Automatically it is scrolling. We didn't need to clip the content. The moment we resize the frame, just like Figma indicated to us, the moment I clicked Command, resize the frame to make it shorter than the content, now the content became scrollable. Let's give this a slightly darker color so it creates more contrast with our content. I'm going to change from a light surface to probably a dark surface. That's too dark, slightly lighter, maybe this. Okay. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to replace this icon here with a cart. So I'm going to come here, double click on the icon. This is where I will have the option to swap this icon. So when Material created this header component, it gave us the ability to swap the instance. So I want to search for a cart. I'm going to type it to look through the icons, and here you go, icons cart. What we want to do next is create a badge on top of this cart to start creating the logic that will allow us to make the cart interactive. So I'm going to zoom in closer. We're going to click O for an ellipse or a circle. So I'm going to do a 16 pixel one. It's easier to probably type it here. It's connected together. Instead of 18, I'm making it 16. And I want to give it a fill. So now our next step and our last step is how to use variables so that we can make this prototype much more testable, much more realistic when we want to test it with our users. So just to show you how it is right now, if I were to click on add to cart, nothing happens, right? But in a real life scenario, if this was a coded application, what will happen is once you click on add to cart, this cart number will change. So let's go create that with simple Figma variables. Once again, I have to focus on how wonderful this feature is of having variables within Figma. Never before this logic was so available to us within the design software. So with nothing selected on my canvas, I can see local variables visible to me. So I'm gonna click create variable. There's multiple collections. I have another video where you can see how to make use of the different collections, but for this purpose of this video, we're going to use a very simple one variable. So I'm gonna click on create variable, and it will ask you for the different options, which one that you need. We need a number variable here. So I'm gonna select that, and I'm gonna call this variable items in cart. I'm using camel case for it, and I'm gonna give it an initial value of 0. That's all I need for this. Now I'm gonna close this, and I will show you how we will apply this variable. So where we want to apply this variable is to the badge itself, to the text inside the badge. Can you see? The text is 1, and when you come here and scroll, you will see there is a variable available to me for this number. So when I click apply variable, if I had multiple, it will give me many options, but what I care for is items in cart. So I applied it to this. So now this is a variable. This carries a certain logic. However, our next step would be that we want to affect this logic when we take an action. So where do we want to affect this logic? By clicking on the add to cart button. Rather than applying it to the different instances, let's go to the component itself that will carry the logic for us all across the instances. And we're going to go to prototype to add this logic. As you can see, because this button was created by Material, it already has certain interactions for press and hover. So we're going to need to use a different interaction. So I'm going to click the plus button, and I'm going to say on tap or on click basically, but on tap is what's available to me. So on tap, what I want you to do is set a variable. And what are you going to do with this variable? We're going to take the items in cart variable from collection 1, and then we're going to use the addition logic. We want to add 1 to it. So I'm going to type, so we chose addition, and I'm going to say plus 1. If I click outside, you will see what this is happening. So we've set a variable logic on this button that when you click it, it will take the items in cart number and add one to it. Now let's see how this will behave. Let's go to our presentation mode. This is all our items. I'm gonna come here, click add to cart, and do you see the 0 just changed to 1. Add to cart, add to cart, add to cart. And that's the result we wanted to achieve. Like this, you can make a very simple prototype much more interactive and realistic, allowing you to test it with your users and to achieve a better result. I hope you found this helpful, and I'll see you in the next video. If you like these videos and find them helpful, please help me by subscribing or liking them. Thank you so much.